Lindsey Graham, the senior senator from South Carolina, 4 times elected, an Air Force veteran, a military lawyer, died Saturday night at the age of 71. He had just flown home from Kyiv, Ukraine, and it was just 2 days after his birthday. The doctors are calling it an aortic dissection, sudden and fast, the kind of thing that gives a family no warning at all. I first met Lindsey Graham back when the Tea Party movement was just getting started, and our paths crossed for the better part of the years that followed. We did not agree on everything, but nobody in this movement does. Back in 2011, when the country was fighting over the debt ceiling, he stood with us trying to change the way Washington approves more borrowing. We did not win that fight, but I never forgot that he was willing to wage it. And every single time I sat down with him over the years, he was gracious, affable, and kind, the same man in private you see on television. The last time I sat down with him was this past March. We talked about the Save America Act. I told him that Susan Collins had sponsored it and that at the time we had 50 co-sponsors. And I thanked him for 2 things. I told him I appreciated his standing for Israel and her right to defend herself. And I told him I appreciated his willingness to help President Trump make sure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. He listened, he was warm, and he was still in the fight. That was Lindsey Graham. President Trump shared his thoughts on multiple networks, from NBC's Meet the Press and CNN yesterday to Fox and Friends this morning. Here are some of his reflections.
Well, it's devastating. I thought he was fine. He called me last night. He just got back from Ukraine, and he had a great trip. He was telling me about the trip. He was pushing very, very hard. You probably know he wanted to do the Save America Act. That he was talking about that. He was full of vim and vigor. He was tired. He said, "I'm tired," because it's a long trip. But other than that, he was fine.
And here's what I cannot stop thinking about. We now know how the senator spent one of his final hours. On Saturday evening, he picked up the phone and he called the President of the United States. And the last fight he chose to make was one to ensure that only American citizens decide American elections. This morning, a Senate seat is empty. A state is grieving. A family lost a brother and an uncle. We hold them up in our prayers. And then we pick up right where he left off. Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show. I'm Jenny Beth Martin.
Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Senator Graham's last call to President Trump was about the Save America Act, the bill that requires proof of citizenship to register to vote and voter ID to cast a ballot. Within hours of his death, the president went on television and called the loss of Lindsey Graham's life a big blow to that bill. And Senator Mike Lee answered with the only question that matters now: how many days does the Senate have left to pass it? His answer is as many as we want. And here's the plain truth the Senate has dodged for a year. 50 senators are already on record for the House-passed bill. The merits are not the problem. The problem is a lack of leadership working to overcome the 60-vote threshold. Lindsey Graham spent his last hours on this. The question for his colleagues is whether they will finish it or let it die with him. His death also changes the map overnight. The Republican majority drops to 52 to 47. A budget committee gavel is suddenly vacant, and so is a pivotal seat on the Judiciary Committee, which matters a great deal this week. And in South Carolina, the clock has already started. A special primary is set for August 11th, with the filing window opening in a few days. Governor McMaster can name someone to hold the seat, but only as a bridge until the people of South Carolina choose for themselves. That empty judiciary seat will be noticed on Wednesday when the president's pick to run the Justice Department, Todd Blanche, has his confirmation hearing this week. With Graham gone from that committee, a single Republican defection could stall the whole thing. The president won his election. He is entitled to his own attorney general. We'll be watching that committee very closely this week. Overseas, the ceasefire with Iran is over, and I'm standing with the President of the United States over a regime that has spent over 40 years chanting death to America. Lindsey Graham was the loudest hawk in the chamber, and the Senate will feel his absence on this one. Here at home, there is a real accountability story. House Republicans say the government has recovered $42 billion by prosecuting fraud, money stolen right out of your pockets. And more than 8 in 10 Americans say they want a permanent system to stop the theft before it happens, not just to claw it back afterwards. Enforce the law, recover the money. This is not complicated. We have a lot to get to and 2 terrific guests on the show today. Robert McNeily, our Director of Broadcasting and Grassroots Engagement, is going to take the show from here to introduce and interview the guests. Robert, thanks for being on the show again today.
Thank you, Jenny Beth. We are happy to welcome Rich Marianos, one of the country's top law enforcement voices. He's here to talk on the Charlie Kirk case and the evidence that could potentially convict the alleged shooter, in addition to his worthy mission as executive director of TLEN. And later on the show, we have Justine Brooke Murray of the Media Research Center on all of it, the latest in the United States Senate to Iran, and even where the media spin might land this week. But first, one thing you can do this afternoon to continue to fight for the Save America Act. Here we honor the foundation of our constitutional republic, now 250 years young, and it takes 2 minutes. The Save America Act needs the Senate to act, and the senators are back in town today. So call that Capitol Hill switchboard, 202-224-3121. Ask for both of your senators and tell them to finish what Lindsey Graham started. Pass the Save America Act. And for the talking points, the frequently asked questions, and to email them directly, go to passthesaveamericaact.com and go to teapartypatriots.org to join the only Citizens Vote Coalition. Now make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Joining us now is Rich Marianos, who spent 27 years at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, and now runs the Tobacco Law Enforcement Network. Rich, welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and it's a pleasure.
Yes, an absolute pleasure, sir. Rich, the preliminary hearing for the man accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk just wrapped, and it's headed to trial. You've run these investigations, and in a case like this, what does the forensic evidence actually do, and where does an agency like the ATF fit in?
Well, ATF is probably the most important because it's going to tie the gun to the shooter's hands, whether tracing it and going from person to person to who the purchaser was, all the way to the possessor. And then in addition to doing the forensic analysis on the bullets and the bullet that was recovered and make a determination, was there one shooter who used one weapon in one instance that killed Charlie Kirk?
And for people who watch this on television and think that all of this is courtroom drama, how solid is physical evidence like DNA and ballistics when it's actually collected correctly?
Well, the ballistic evidence is extremely important because it's physical evidence. The DNA evidence is a lot of nonsense, in my opinion. It's good when you get it. It's good when it links or it's non-conclusive, but it's extremely hard in this case to get DNA from a gun. In my experience, it was almost nil to none did you ever recover, conclusive DNA from a firearm. And I think a lot of it is, what's the word I want to use? Smoke and mirrors being played by the defense to get away from the real evidence of Charlie Kirk walking with the gun in his leg, pretending like he had some kind of disability, to running from the area where the shooting occurred, to finally his confession, his written confession to his roommate that, he was going to do it, to include the bullets, the ballistics. 20, 30 years ago, this guy would be on death row. But now we have these crazy defense attorneys that, want to just clutter up the minds of the jurors because somebody watched CSI one time, or they've watched these TV shows where, we got DNA off this metal object and we can conclude or put it right in the hands of the offender, is just absolutely nuts. It does not happen that often. They need to concentrate on the physical evidence, what has taken place, what the witnesses saw, and put this individual down. It's not that difficult. This is tricks by defense lawyers that constantly prey on jurors that watch a lot of TV or are exposed to facts that aren't even relevant in nowadays in police work.
Your point, Rich, this case has also become a magnet for conspiracy theories, sadly, on the right side of the aisle. How should this movement talk about a case like this? And why do you think the defense has really tried to kick the can down the road? I'm all about defending your client, and Tyler Robinson deserves constitutional rights afforded to him by being a citizen of the United States. But it seems as if, like you said, this is a slam dunk case.
Yeah, and these conspiracy theorists, look at the evidence. Come on. There wasn't a second shooter. He confessed to his roommate. There's video all over the place of where he was at the time. There's video of him jumping off the building where the shooting occurred. There's more than enough physical evidence to dissuade and put down the conspiracy theorists. Let's use that in the trial by the prosecutors, and let's move this thing along. Next thing you know, the defense is going to say, what about the third Martian that was found, running around the building 7 hours before, planting guns and evidence? It didn't happen. It did not occur. Let's go to the physical evidence and move on.
And we remember the victims in all this, the Kirk family, and the emotions that are running high in these courtrooms, and even for the Robinson family, as it's reported that his own parents turned him in. So a very highly emotional case for countless millions throughout the country. Now, Rich, your other fight is the flood of illicit vapes, a lot of them from China, and border and enforcement agencies are now warning store owners not to sell them or face fines. Now, why does this kind of enforcement matter, especially on the local level?
Well, it's important because the amount of money that China is making on the backs of our kids and the backs of our communities is astronomical. They brought up a good point in the earlier segment about the $45 billion that's being recovered by fraudsters. That's great. I applaud the work. Hooray for Kash Patel. But let's look at what's happening here. There's hundreds of billions of dollars every year that the Chinese are exploiting by these dangerous manufactured vapes that are being brought in, sold out of these smoke shops that are like neighborhood crack houses, and also being sold in the communities and brought down to our children that are using them at a number that we've never seen before. In some communities, there's a 2,000% increase of the criminal use of Chinese vapes by our young adults. And that is very significant because on one side, we have China is our number one national security concern, and then our children, which are our greatest resource, colliding. We need to put a stop to this, and a great way to do it is to go after these vape shops. If you Google today criminal vape crimes, you will find so many of these shops that are being licensed by unaware communities that are letting these places sell synthetic narcotics, criminal Chinese vapes, laundering money, carrying guns, other narcotics that are Schedule 1, Schedule 2. It is terrible what we have going on right now, and we need our political people, our law enforcement people, our parents, our educators to get in the game and fight. And a big fight, and I applaud you all for getting me on this program and being able to discuss it and addressing this thing head on. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars a year that communist China is making on our kids. But when people look, let's just license the vape shop. Let's allow these people to, sell these products. Stop it. It's wrong.
Truly poisoning our best and brightest, our future of this country. The Federal Trade Commission is also warning companies about false made in the USA claims. Tie this all together for me with your experience. Why does it matter when companies keep finding the loopholes to exploit the victims and the most vulnerable here in America?
Well, what's important is to understand the FDA has a list of those that are doing it right and producing products for tobacco harm reduction. The first idea of vapes was on target. Let's get people away from traditional smoking of combustibles. So right now there's a list of regulated vapes, or registered vapes, I should say, that run between 40 and 50 products. Everything else, 900,000, is not manufactured in the United States. It's manufactured in China. It's a criminal product, and it shouldn't be allowed in the United States. And what some of these tricky tricksters in China are doing right now is they're taking the chemicals and diverting them to a nexidine, is what they call it, instead of nicotine. And it's no different. It's illegal, it's contraband, and we need a full court press to address whatever shell game they're going to play to avoid the regulations and the issues that the FDA has put in this industry and made it safer for those who choose to get away from smoking, like the Surgeon General stood in front of in the 1960s.
Now, are current tobacco control policies missing the harm reduction picture? And what would smarter enforcement actually look like? Does it start at the border, which has been highly secured in this part of the administration, but is it more becoming neighborhoods throughout the country that are lenient on their regulations of this?
It's a combination of both. We have to look at the borders and how these Chinese products are getting smuggled in, but we also need an aggressive approach amongst our local leaders, not followers, not managers. We need leaders, but local leadership that's going to direct law enforcement to go into these shops and disrupt them. We also need leaders to work with the school systems, to work with the kids, to work with the parents. So it's a multi-pronged approach. And also, to initiate all this, we need funding from the 202 area code. We need the Washington, D.C. to understand that this is an epidemic. It's not a flash in the pan. And recently they talked back in September that there's $200 million for local law enforcement to address this problem. That money needs to be put in the hands of the doers, not the talkers, not the thinkers, but the ones that are going to go out there and close these shops down and make the community safer, not just for the kids, but for all around. When I call them the crack houses, if you look, they're robberies that are taking place all over the country at these locations, burglaries, what I used to call teams that are doing scores on these places because it's a cash business. And many of them, if they're selling illegal products, who do they complain to? Do you call 911 and say, hey, police, I just got robbed of my $70,000 from selling illegal vapes? Where if a 7-Eleven gets hit for $10,000, they call the police because registered interstate products have been stolen, taken, or they're a legitimate business doing legitimate commerce.
Angel families have really expanded, Rich, over the course of the last decade because of these poisonings. We're talking about hundreds of thousands who are not drug addicts. And I think that's been the misnomer for some people, either not paying attention or not seeing it in their community. But for many of us covering this and who have been involved in this advocacy, we know someone, perhaps a close personal friend, family member, or even someone in the neighborhood who has succumbed to this. And in many cases, it can be one try and then you're done. This is truly a poisoning, especially of America's children. And I want that point to get through. From your expertise, how can we focus on, yes, the big picture? You've lined out the federal funding and the help from there. But what about educating parents on the ground? Can there be things that school boards can do, county boards, to their own personal zip codes in order to stop this carnage and the death and destruction of American kids?
Yeah, and that's what you hit it right on the head. We need to get to the parents and the educators because it needs to be a multi-pronged approach and sometimes a two-front war, enforcement and education. And that's one of the biggest things that we try to do with our tobacco law enforcement network is work with law enforcement, work with legislators, work with educators. Those are our three people that are our three audiences that are the most important people in the room. People have to understand that, well, if the mentality of my kid's not in a gang, my kid's not using fentanyl, if they're only vaping, that's not a problem. It is a problem when they're vaping these Chinese products that no one knows what's in them. I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you the ones that are registered by the FDA have gone through thousands and thousands of tests for tobacco harm reduction. But these Chinese products that are coming across as Geek Bar or, Skittle, Captain Crunch, some of these things that are coming across being manufactured in the form of water bottles so the young adults and the kids can use them at school, or hoodies in which you can vape through the eyelets. This is all dangerous stuff, unregulated, unexamined, that we need to work towards back to your original point and question, to get the educators and the parents to know what's behind it, to understand that it's a lot more than, oh, this is just vaping. It is a criminal enterprise, a continuing criminal enterprise with high value targets, some of the most dangerous targets in the world that are using these shops. And if there's anybody in this audience that likes these shops in their neighborhood, I would love to sit and debate and talk to them, because they have become an epicenter of crime in every location that they go to. And the statistics show it. The crime shows it. The police chiefs will tell you about it. And we need to act, and we need help from our legislators.
Well, thank you for this, Rich. I feel like I'm learning a lot through you. And the thorough line today is enforcement, as you mentioned, whether it is a murder case, illegal vapes, or election law. It's that real difference right now. One side enforces the law, the other does not. So how do we continue that advocacy? And in addition to that, is there any danger in what they used to call secondhand smoke with cigarettes, say 15, 20 years ago? Any issue of someone, say, vaping in a car and inhaling those vapors, those fumes, if you're inside and not even doing that yourself, but maybe near someone that's doing it inside?
I would love to give you an answer. I'm not a doctor and I don't know about that. And, those are studies that I'm not familiar with at this time. And to give you an answer or to opine on it would be wrong. But going back to what you're originally saying about enforcement, is you're absolutely right. This is the time to begin strong enforcement in this nation. It's a bipartisan effort on both sides. You should not want our children addicted to Chinese products. We should not want the Red China organized crime manufacturing these devices and selling them in the United States. You should not want these smoke shops, like I said, corner licensed crack houses operating in your area. And everyone needs to get together on this, because it's a domino effect. If you allow one of these shops to operate with impunity, 3 more shall, 4 more shall. Because, like I said, at the rates and the evidence that shows in some places a 2,000% increase among our young adults, this is where they're getting it from, and this is where we have to stop them.
Well, we'll watch for that in each and every one of our communities. Rich Marianos, once again, a 27-year expert on this. You've seen it all in the field with the ATF. Tell us about your organization as well. Where can people find you, and how can they help your network and your nonprofit to make sure people are safe in the streets?
The best way to do it is contact us. Just go and type in the Tobacco Law Enforcement Network. We'll be glad to reach out to you, work with you. We provide case studies to law enforcement. We work with universities, police organizations, convenience store associations. There's nobody that has turned us away at this point in terms of educating and helping one another on this. We'll work with schools, politicians. We have enough members of the organization that can come out and fill their specific niche. I kind of view it as the old Oakland Raiders. You buy a player or you get a player in free agency to cover some place that needs it, whether it's in the backfield or the defensive end. This is what we're trying to do, is we put teachers in touch with teachers, school resource officers in touch with school resource officers. But we put the right players in the right form of the community to help them. If you go on this site and you reach out to them, I guarantee you're going to get a call back, a response back, or materials back that can help you in your effort. There is no silos here. It's total transparency, and we welcome everyone, from even the Center for Tobacco-Free Kids, anybody out there that wants to work with us to stop this epidemic and stop criminal activity. We're your friends.
Rich, thank you for joining us again here on the Jenny Beth Show and doing God's work. And we hope to keep up with you and help you however we can, as you're doing it in such a bipartisan manner. Come back and see us soon.
Thank you so much. I'm a friend of the show. You need me, a call. Thank you.
And stay with us. We'll be right back after this message from Tea Party Patriots Action. And then Justine Brooke Murray joins us on Graham's Senate seat, Iran, and the week ahead.
You are the grassroots of America. You love this country. When you love something, really love it, the news doesn't just inform you, it fires you up. and you find yourself asking, how can I make a difference? That is exactly what this show is built to answer. Never, ever, ever, ever give up. We owe it to every American who has ever voted to make America great again. We owe it to our future selves. We owe it to this republic to stand tall, to stay active, and to be smart about how we spend our energy so that we can win. Here on the Jenny Beth Show, we're going to help you do exactly that. Every show, we will break down the news, connect it to first principles, and give you specific, effective ways to take action. Not just outrage, action. And I am so glad you're here on this journey with us to do it. So let's get to it.
Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Welcome back to the Jenny Beth Show. I'm Robert McNeily, and joining us now, it's Justine Brooke Murray of the Media Research Center. Welcome to the show on a somber day. Please offer your reflections on the life and legacy of Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina.
Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for having me. When I woke up the other day, I was so devastated. I was also shocked. And then I was shocked, but not so much shocked about how the media mourned Lindsey Graham. You're basically not allowed to mourn anyone, right, of socialist, according to the left-wing media, without placing an asterisk. Oh, well, by the way, he also had these opinions that we really disagree with and we really don't like. And it says a lot about the mainstream left now, that they truly believe that someone's death is justified, or that it's okay to celebrate or cheer on someone's death simply because of their different viewpoints and their different perspectives. But something about Lindsey Graham that I didn't know until yesterday was that when he was just 21 or 22, both of his parents passed away, and he actually adopted his 13-year-old sister. He was in the military. He was a hero. But part of the reason why he adopted his sister was not just so she could still be with family and she wouldn't have to unfortunately be placed in the system like so many other young orphans, but also that she would receive the same benefits as he did working in the military. And it just says so much about his character, something that of course the elitist media will never talk about. You hear a lot of other things. These evil right-wingers or these evil politicians in power. Well, actually, he passed away with the most modest means compared to his colleagues.
And that's such a beautiful reflection, Justine, because he's someone who really came into the light in an entertaining way, and especially after what took place with Brett Kavanaugh and that hearing, and something that we're focused on the last few hours of his life, wanting to work with President Trump on the Save America Act. And that's what this organization is focused on here with the Tea Party Patriots action. With Senator Graham gone and the president calling it blow to the bill, does this death move any of these senators, or is that just wishful thinking as we get later on in the legislative term?
I would say, unfortunately, it's just wishful thinking. Time and again, there's the same conversations. And of course, what the left does is that they'll filibuster, they'll bring in the media to continue convincing you that the SAVE Act is racist because, it's racist and terrible to want to have voter ID, just like you need an ID to get into a bar, get toilet paper at a good price, along with your Costco membership card in order to simply get toiletries. So the idea that they'll just keep spinning the narrative, trying to convince us that we should essentially, election-wise, leave our doors unlocked, or else we're a bunch of bigots, just like they do with immigration. Open the borders, let people fraud you, let the third world come in, let the left try to cheat with dead voters and non-existent people and people from different countries who aren't citizens, or else we're all just terrible bigots.
And you make that point so well as host of Woke of the Week at MRC. But Graham's seat now being empty, the majority is down to 52 and South Carolina is already scrambling toward this August primary. I'm honestly worried that we are running out of time on this legislative calendar before the midterm elections. How big or narrow is this majority of 52 to 47, and who is watching it this closely, and will it activate the base to get out there and vote in November?
It depends on how the media spins it. And they're the ones who are watching it closely. And that's why you can tell I watched and I read all of their coverage right after Lindsey Graham's death. And they're trying to flip to things like they're also trying to tie in other issues. Iran, they're using issues to distract Americans or to once again tell Americans, hey, wanting voter ID, they love to use the word democracy. As you know, this is going to be the end of democracy. Democracy is their version of democracy, which is basically you vote, whether fairly or unfairly, because the vote is taken for you or taken from you, to have the government take away your rights. Of course, in the name of democracy, this is the same party that put mothers on watch lists, that worked with the SPLC to put people on watch lists. And of course, we knew they also did that to Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk right before he was murdered. In the name of democracy, they always love to use their own political power to wage lawfare, politically motivated lawfare. And then when it comes to voting, to make sure that we don't have secure elections. And on top of that, to try to gerrymander entire states like Virginia, where I'm living in Virginia right now. And Abigail Spanberger, who said she was against gerrymandering, well, in the name of democracy, she tried to make it so that Virginia was totally gerrymandered, where you'd only have one district that could potentially remain on the right or just not taken over by the left forever and completely.
Oh, their form of democracy on the left looks like two wolves and a sheep, as Benjamin Franklin warned us about. But on Iran, on that topic, Justine, the president says the ceasefire is over and the strait is open. Now, the press keeps laundering Tehran's vision for the world and their version of the story. So how is that coverage getting it wrong? And is the administration actually on the right track?
No matter what the administration says or does about Iran, the media, it's half the Trump derangement syndrome. So they're going to always spin it as President Trump just made this terrible decision, even though some of his recent moves, you could say that, maybe there was a little bit of an agreement with some members of the left who supported Obama, who claimed that they just wanted to foment peace in the region. It doesn't matter, even if President Trump, even when he does, which he does, he achieves to have a little bit, at least temporary peace in the region. The left will hate it no matter what. Unfortunately, the situation is this. You're dealing with a 7th century ideology. You're dealing with primitive terrorist thugs. And we're continuing to speak to them and with them as if they have the same mindset as the Western man, as if they're going to be as civilized, as if they didn't just execute 36,000 of their own citizens within the span of 2 days, or as if they don't throw gays and women off rooftops. But it's very telling on the media's front to see where they stand. CNN's Wolf Blitzer actually complained that Israel tipped off President Trump that Iran recently tried to apparently make another assassination attempt against him. They already tried at least twice, I believe. But Wolf Blitzer complained, well, why would Israel tip off the president about that? It must be because they have, another motive. Not the fact that if Israel didn't let President Trump know, or if someone or if anyone didn't let him know, then Iran could have literally assassinated the president. No, Wolf Blitzer doesn't care about that. And of course, it just goes to show you where his motive is and where the motive of the media is. Jake Tapper complained on CNN the other day that President Trump called these mullahs crazy. It's unfair. We have to be nicey nice, as if this is a game of summer camp color wars where we have to sing songs of praise to the other team to make sure everyone's, both happy at the end. We have good sportsmanship. Of course, we have to have good sportsmanship with the people who want us wiped off the face of the earth, apparently, according to the media.
It really is shocking. It would be a comedy if it wasn't so tragic, and especially on the 2-year anniversary of the Butler, Pennsylvania attempted assassination of President Trump. You think that some in the media would be perhaps more cautious or choose their words more wisely, Justine, but let's shift gears to the Blanche hearing. It's Wednesday, and Graham's empty judiciary seat makes it even more tight of a confirmation process. What is at stake if the president cannot set his own attorney general?
Well, what would be at stake is it would show that the leftist mob will rule and the mob mentality will win. It does kind of remind me, even though this is a bit of a different circumstance, during Kavanaugh's hearing, the left's attempt and the media's attempt to basically use mob justice or injustice based off phony accusations, based off lies, things that have been disproven, to try to scare Kavanaugh into basically just stepping down, or trying to just scare lawmakers into shutting him out. They're trying to do the same thing here. It doesn't matter whoever President Trump nominates. It doesn't matter, because President Trump is the one who nominates them. And if it's President Trump nominating them, of course, the media is going to hate it. And the left is going to bend over backwards. What the left wants is they want the they want to use lawfare. So it was totally fine when in New York, Attorney General Letitia James, when she literally campaigned off the idea of trying to throw President Trump in prison. They believe they have the moral authority to wage lawfare against Americans and to throw Americans in jail and to weaponize the justice system, just like President Biden did. It's including against pro-lifers, protesters. Oh, but now that justice is actually in the hands of good people, it's actually justice, and they're actually being held accountable for their injustice. Well, now it's a threat against their so-called democracy.
Never allowing a good crisis to go to waste. They're willing to throw families under the bus as well. As we'll recall towards the end of the show, what happened during those Kavanaugh hearings. So thank you for that reminder, Justine, as you help cover the truth and reveal the media bias at the Media Research Center, especially in that comedic tone. I think you're the funniest and one of the sharpest journalists out there, truly. But the concern over media malfeasance contorts and spreads distrust amongst the electorate. Now, the Justice Department subpoenaed 4 New York Times reporters over leaks about security caps on the president's plane. Now, the press calls it an attack on the free First Amendment, and the press cries foul. But what is the other side of that? Is there a security issue? And again, does the media have that responsibility to help keep the president safe?
The fact that they would complain over something that seems so clear-cut, and if it happened on their side, of course, they would say, oh, it's the right-wing media's attempt to try to, kill their leaders. It's very sketchy to me when this is coming from the side that once again cheers at the deaths of anyone on the right. They justify all assassination attempts against President Trump. They cheered when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. The same people at the New York Times, by the way, they had on Hassan Piker multiple times and nodded along and giggled when he started preaching about how it's okay to it's okay for what Luigi Mangione did. I mean, they're the ones who tee up assassination culture. So of course they would have a problem if the so-called journalists on their side are being held accountable for leaking actual classified security information. Yes, if you leak the whereabouts of the president, and the security detail, it poses a threat that he could very possibly be injured, if not, God forbid, killed. And you mentioned that this is the 2nd anniversary of the Butler assassination attempt. So, of course, it would be clear cut to anyone who's normal, but we're not dealing with a normal ideology anymore. Their mainstream ideology is basically whack, I'll use New Jersey terms, whack anyone who stands in their way.
I have to get back to New Jersey and go to Old Blue Eyes. It's a good look at Manhattan, a delicious cuisine honoring Frank Sinatra, one of those common sense Americans, and was once a Democrat, came to the Republican side. But I found something so interesting over the weekend, Justine. We had a Greater Georgia event put on by, of course, the Honorable Kelly Loeffler, doing an amazing job at the Small Business Administration. And a poll conducted recently that amongst Democrats, the mainstream thinkers that are the base of their party, 2/3 of them consider themselves part of the Mondani progressive far left wing, whereas only 1/3 left consider themselves traditional Democrats. So hopefully we can break some bread, continue to grow the big tent, and bring some amazing new people into the Republican ranks. But another big topic for Americans as they go to the midterm polls, $42 billion recovered from fraud, waste, and abuse. And 83% of Americans want a permanent system to stop it. So do I. I'm amongst those Americans. So why is that a winning fight and a positive message regardless of your party allegiance?
Well, it's a message toward actual justice actually being enacted. And it's just funny, depressing, but comically depressing, I guess, at the same time, to see it that the same people whom Nick Shirley investigated in December, including this one woman named Fatima something or other, she actually just admitted to taking out I believe it's $4.5 million in fraudulent statements. And they just caught her, and she actually admitted, she pled guilty to it. Then you have another guy whom, of course, the AP describes as a Minnesota man, just like they described the Maryland man. Well, he was just arrested in Somalia, and now he's being charged with $250 million in fraud. And it just goes to show how sinister and how malicious CNN was when the first thing they reported after Nick Shirley exposed the fraud in December was not about the fraud itself, but look at this young, dangerous journalist, 20-something years old, who he's not one of those professional career liars like CNN and MS Now who get paid 5 to 6 figures to BS everybody. He actually found the fraud himself, and therefore they told everybody that it was racist for mentioning it, and how dare he investigate this? How dare he do the job that the legacy media refused to do? Well, now he's being proven right. Of course he is. And it just goes to show how ridiculous, how the measures they'll take to cover up the worst of the worst. The media expects us to be second-class citizens to the people who want to conquer us.
It is a blessing to live in such a time as this because, Justine, we have all these things on us. So a lot of citizen journalists out there. So hit record and find the truth out there. And thank you to Nick Shirley amongst countless others who have been doing just that on the ground. Many who are going into dangerous situations and actually risking their very health and well-being in order to do so. They're great Americans, and we are cheering them on here at the Tea Party Patriots Action and the Jenny Beth Show. Now, we've covered a lot of topics today, many what's happening here in the United States, but what is the story that the mainstream media is trying hardest not to tell us about this week in this beautiful mid-July in 2026?
This is something that was just devastating, but also just goes to show how deadly the consequences of what the affluent white leftist women are pushing. This young 40-something-year-old, her name's Jamie Carney, and she was this New Yorker. Of course, she was the stereotype of this champagne socialist. She was born. I don't know if she was born, but she is from Westchester, New York. And the only outlet reporting on this is the New York Post. Other outlets, they're glossing over the details. But she was this pro-Hamas activist. She hit all the Mamdani bells and whistles. And she went out and she moved to Ireland, where she met a so-called asylum seeker, AKA an Islamist from the 7th century, whom Europe imported. And I guess they became a pair. And she was found last week beaten to death in her bed. And of course, the asylum seeker right afterwards fled back to the 7th century. He is now considered a person of interest. But of course, all the outlets, they're not mentioning that part. They're saying, oh, random woman happened to randomly be found beaten to death. And there might be a man who might be a person of interest. They don't go and mention his background or who he was, but he was living in Ireland on government assisted housing. And the name they give to the housing is something like Asylum Seeker Sanctuary. But of course, this is the sad, unfortunate, terrible consequences that the left is pushing. White leftist women, they're shooting themselves in their own foot. And for the most part, leftist women will never bear the consequences of what they preach. Fortunately, they won't. But in these small circumstances, what happened to this woman, it's terrible. Now she's left behind a young daughter.
Yes, it may be a day late and dollar short, Justine, when it comes to what's happened in Europe, and we hope that they get some common sense. And a prediction on my own end, I think we can actually see the UK break up as a result of this. We see the atrocities in Northern Ireland and the entire island of the Republic of Ireland considering coming back together. We'll see what happens with the Scottish Free Movement. We know that's been voted down in the past, but we have yet to wait and see because of this migrant issue and illegal immigration and the Muslim problem, the Islamism taking place throughout Europe. So thank you for joining us on that. Now I have a curveball question for you before we let you go with all your expertise. We have the FIFA World Cup. We're down to 4. What's your take on it? And who do you think will prevail in something that's really showcased how much Europeans love Americans and vice versa?
I'll say this. I'm as keen on sports as AOC is keen on geography. But I did get to pop in and see France beat Morocco the other day. What I love about this, though, the greatest thing, learning about the World Cup and watching these fans come from all these different places in Europe, is to see these videos of young Europeans. I was actually in the green room at Fox News with one of these young men who they're going online and they're saying verbatim, the media is lying to you guys, and they lied to us about what America is like. They actually got to experience America for itself. They were so surprised that we had an abundance and that we had not just freedom of speech, but they were so surprised to see at one point in an American supermarket that on the vegetables, they're kept fresh because you have those little rain machines. One guy, a couple of people, they were from Germany. And in Germany, of course, they will be jailed for posting the wrong Facebook memes. So it's so heartwarming to see them come here and experience what America is actually like. And it's kind of funny to see how the New York Times, they had to write an entire essay trying to defend, no, it's not because they like America. It's just because they're confused. They like our food, of course. Our food brought to you by capitalism and our abundant...
And ranch dressing. Lots of ranch dressing to bring back home. Love your coverage of America 250, the Great American State Fair. Have you had a highlight thus far? And are you looking to that Grand Prix that's going to happen in the streets of Washington, D.C. in late August?
I am very excited, although I will say this. I was in D.C. I was there at the fireworks in line for President Trump's speech, and it was very hot out, and I almost passed out. Half from excitement, half from I can't stand the heat. Like I'm a bit of a diva. Maybe I'm a little high maintenance, but we were standing out there for pretty long. It was very cool, however, to see hundreds of thousands, what seemed like hundreds of thousands of Americans flood the streets in celebration. It's such a breath of fresh air from when I was living in DC under the Biden regime. Easter was celebrated where President Biden invited the gender confused strippers. They were flashing their moobs in front of kids at the Easter egg roll. So it's just wonderful that, it's a little bit of a swamp, but our DC, our capital, loves America again. And it's ridiculous that there was a point where they didn't. But now we have people working in the White House and working in the Trump administration who are from the heartland, who are from all these different factions of this country, from all these different backgrounds. So I actually feel like for the first time, DC is starting to represent you and me.
Yes, and it is a wonderful place to go, Washington, D.C. A big shout out to Wise Guys. It's been a long time since I've sat out there in the District of Columbia and enjoyed a late night or early morning pizza after what was a huge celebration. Of course, President Trump made sure to do that on the 4th of July, regardless of that weather. Justine, Brooke Murray, host of Woke of the Week. Where can we find you, and where can the good patriots out there follow all of the action that you cover in the nation's capital and beyond?
Certainly, head to mrc.org. You can also find us on X at the MRC or at MRC TV. On Instagram, we're at Media Research Center, and I'll do one self-plug. I'm very big on X at Justine_Brooke.
Well, always good to see you. Thank you for joining us once again, Justine Brooke Murray of the Media Research Center. Stick with us right after this quick promo, and we'll see you in a moment. Before we go, and we have this saying down in Georgia, one ask for all y'all patriots at home, because this is the week it matters most. Lindsey Graham's final cause was the Save America Act, and you can pick up where he left off. Call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121. Ask for both of your senators and tell them to finish what he started and pass the Save America Act. Go to passthesaveamerica.act.com for everything you need, and to teapartypatriots.org to join that fight. Only American citizens should decide American elections. That is worth a phone call today, and I'll be sure jumping on the phone this afternoon to do just that with you patriots at home. Now, I want to end the day today by letting the senator speak for himself. Whatever our disagreements over the years were, he loved this country. Senator Lindsey Graham never stopped fighting for South Carolina, the Palmetto State, and America as a whole. He was also a stalwart campaigner and offered the people of Georgia a pathway supporting now Ambassador Herschel Walker in his United States Senate run back in 2022. And I enjoyed meeting Senator Graham and watching how he peacefully and patriotically engaged constituents. Many people in line that day said they wanted to give Senator Graham a piece of their mind as I was waiting to take that picture with the two gentlemen. To his credit, he listened, engaged, and with the utmost respect, spoke to Georgia voters. Perhaps his most impressive moment arrived in 2018 during the heated Kavanaugh hearings, cementing Lindsey Graham's 2.0 status as a defender of common sense and decency for the Senate Judiciary Committee and the High Court. Watch this moment that is truly unforgettable.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy.
Now, within the last hour or so, President Trump has recommended the appointment of Lindsey Graham's sister to the open South Carolina Senate seat. Legally speaking, the decision is up to Governor Henry McMaster of the Palmetto State, and he is expected to make an appointment today at 4 o'clock Eastern, so be sure to watch that. Now, on this second anniversary of the frightening assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, and President Trump's recent opening of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum in North Dakota, we are truly reminded that it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming. But who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Lindsey Graham was in the arena as an Air Force colonel, JAG officer, a congressman, and as the man who raised his teenage sister after his parents passed when he was in his early 20s. Rest in peace, Senator Lindsey Graham. To his family, to the people of South Carolina, our prayers are with you, and to the rest of us, the best tribute we can give a man who spent his last hours fighting for this country, to keep it, fighting it for ourselves, to keep it free, to keep it the United States of America. I'm Robert McNeily, in for Jenny Beth Martin. God bless you. God bless the memory of Lindsey Graham, and God bless the United States of America. We'll see you tomorrow.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. It really helps us reach more people who care about liberty and the Constitution. You can find this and other episodes at jennybethshow.com, as well as Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, X, and your favorite podcast platform.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.